She paid $2,900 for a purebred Maine Coon kitten from a breeder who showed her the pedigree papers, the vet records, and 3 generations of champion bloodlines. She named him Thor. She brought him home in a designer carrier. She bought him a $400 cat tree, custom engraved bowls, and premium salmon pate that cost more than her own lunch. For 1 full year, she loved that cat more than she had ever loved anything in her life. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon in November, a veterinarian she had never met took one look at Thor and said 5 words that shattered Emily Chen's entire world. "Ma'am, this isn't what you think." Emily was 26 years old, a dental hygienist living in a small apartment in Portland, Oregon. She had grown up with a cat named Bean, who slept on her pillow every single night for 14 years. Bean had been with her through her parents' divorce, through college, through her first apartment, through her first real job. When Bean passed away 8 months earlier from kidney failure, the silence in her apartment had been unbearable. She kept waking up at 3 a.m., reaching for the space at the foot of the bed where Bean used to sleep. She kept setting out 2 bowls at dinner time by accident. She kept hearing the phantom sound of a cat's footsteps on the hardwood floor at night. She spent weeks researching breeders. She read every article about Maine Coons. She watched hundreds of TikTok videos of these giant, majestic cats with ear tufts and lion manes and eyes like polished amber. She wanted one desperately, not because she wanted to replace Bean. Nobody could replace Bean, but because she wanted the silence to end. After 3 months on a waiting list and a $500 deposit she could barely afford, she finally got the call. The breeder operated out of a converted barn 2 hours east of Portland. A woman named Denise met Emily in the driveway and showed her a kitten with silver and charcoal markings, enormous paws, and eyes that were almost yellow. "This is Thor," Denise said. 4 months old, father is a national champion. Emily handed over $2,900 in cash. Denise handed her a single sheet of paper with stamps and signatures. Emily didn't read it carefully. She was too busy falling in love. Thor grew fast, faster than Emily expected. At 6 months old, he was already 14 pounds. At 9 months, he was 18 pounds. At 1 year, when Emily took him in for his annual checkup, he weighed 23 pounds and measured 42 inches from nose to tail. The young vet at her usual clinic was on holiday. A substitute vet was filling in, a soft-spoken older man named Dr. Abernathy, who had been practicing for 38 years. Emily carried Thor into the exam room, placed him on the metal table, and smiled proudly. "Is he the biggest Maine Coon you've ever seen?" Dr. Abernathy didn't answer right away. He put his glasses on, he lifted Thor's chin, he pressed his hands along Thor's spine, he ran his fingers through the thick fur on his back legs. He looked at his paws for a long moment. He counted his toes twice. He measured the shape of his skull with his hands. The longer he examined Thor, the tighter Emily's chest became. The fluorescent light above the exam table hummed. Thor sat perfectly still, his amber eyes fixed on Emily like he was telling her everything would be okay. Then Dr. Abernathy sat down slowly on the wheeled stool, took off his glasses, and said the words Emily will never forget as long as she lives. "Ma'am, this isn't what you think." But here is what makes this story different, because what Dr. Abernathy said next didn't break her heart the way you might expect. "I see you are still watching and haven't subscribed yet. Honestly, that hurts a little. Hit subscribe now. What comes next is the reason this story will stay with you forever." Thor was not a purebred Maine Coon. Thor was a mixed breed, half Maine Coon, yes, but the other half was something called a Norwegian forest cat crossed with an ordinary domestic longhair. His pedigree papers were forged. The breeder was running an unlicensed operation. There had been 3 complaints about her already. Dr. Abernathy knew because he had seen 2 of her Maine Coons the month before. Emily had been cheated. The $2,900 was gone. Thor was technically worth, on paper, less than $300. Emily sat on the floor of that exam room and cried, not because Thor was a mixed breed, not because the papers were fake. She cried because she had spent a full year introducing him to people as my $2,900 Maine Coon, like he was a designer handbag instead of a living soul. She cried because she had loved an idea more than the cat himself. She cried because Thor had been sitting next to her on the floor this whole time, purring, bumping his huge head into her shoulder, not understanding any of it, not caring about any of it, loving her without conditions. Dr. Abernathy sat down on the floor next to her. His knees cracked. He was 71 years old. He looked at Thor and then he looked at Emily, and he said something she wrote down that same night so she would never forget it. Young lady, that cat does not know he costs $2,900. That cat does not know he is a mixed breed. That cat only knows you are his entire world. If you want my opinion, and you did not ask for it, that is the best kind of cat to have. Emily drove home that afternoon with Thor in the passenger seat. She stopped at a red light. She looked at him. He looked back at her and blinked slowly. Cats blink slowly when they trust you, when they love you, when they are home. She started crying again, but this time for a different reason. She never told anyone about the breeder. She never filed a complaint. She never tried to get her money back. But she did one thing. She took down every single post on her social media that called Thor my purebred Maine Coon. She replaced the captions. She started writing just 3 words under every photo. This is Thor. Today, Emily is 28 and Thor is 3. He weighs 24 pounds. He sleeps curled around her neck every night like a furry scarf. He greets her at the door when she comes home from work with a chirping sound that isn't quite a meow. He brings her socks from the laundry basket. He steals pieces of salmon off her plate, and she pretends not to notice. Emily's apartment isn't silent anymore. It hasn't been silent for 2 years, and the woman who once spent $2,900 trying to buy a specific kind of love has learned something she tries to tell every person who asks about Thor. It doesn't matter what your cat cost. It doesn't matter what breed he is. It doesn't matter what his papers say. The only thing that matters is whether he looks up when you walk in the door, whether he presses his head against your hand when you are crying, whether he curls up on your chest when you are sick and refuses to leave. Thor didn't know he was supposed to be a champion. Nobody told him, and somehow, without any of the papers or the bloodlines or the $2,900 price tag, he became the most important creature in Emily Chen's life anyway. If you have ever loved a pet that cost nothing, that came from a shelter, that was rescued off the side of a road, then you already know what Emily learned in that exam room. Love is not something you can buy. Love is not something you can breed. Love is something that happens when a living soul decides you are home. And sometimes the cat you thought was purebred turns out to be something far more valuable. A cat who is never trying to be anything except yours. Would you love your pet the same way if you found out their papers were fake? Tell me in the comments.